So part A, this is from the earlier reporting, and it's just these are the shortlisted options that we just needed, that we've been talking, that we've refined. Seems like yonks ago now, but we're just, the background in it is that it just highlights what we're talking about in terms of real dollars. Some of them are just eye-wateringly high. I'm talking about the private land discharge. You can see it's just high particularly when we're looking at the LTP money. So that was again, councils need to just juggle many balls, and this is just one of the lines within it is what is the real money that is affordable for the spend on consenting. It's the same with all projects. So prior to the LTP that's just going through council meetings now, there was a lesser amount. It was at 15 million for several years as a placeholder. This has come up to something a bit more realistic, but it's a figure that is a target we have to sort of be thinking about in the back of the minds. But the challenge to the technical team is to refine the options to work within that ballpark figure, but also meet the objectives that we set on day one with this project. So at the moment, we really only have, when you look at that, we really have the option that I don't think would suit many people at all. It's the existing scenario, which is I mean, that'll be a traumatic way to go. So we have to think about how we can. Now we have these figures to react to. Now is our time to really think about next steps and bring just do what we can do to make it more favourable and in line with these objectives, which include, I'm not going to read them all out, but we know what it is: keeping communities healthy, being able to work in partnership with community and hapu, etc., and respect kaitiaki and customary fishing. So when I'm looking at that, this is just as an example. I'm looking, just breaking down the costs a little bit. Like in terms of the treatment scenarios, the advanced treatment solutions, there really, for an upgrade, there really is two that we've been focusing on, which has been the tertiary membrane, which is which has solid removal capability in other species, and also MBR. So with the tertiary membrane, the capex would be 19.5 million versus the capex for an MBR unit, which we've got 30.8 million. When you look at the differences in approaches, the real difference comes down to the nitrogen, the total nitrogen and total phosphates. And again, this is where we need to really consider what's the best technical solution for the environment. We're talking about an estuarine environment. If we're going to be going to having a residual flow to the ocean, it's different to the river communities where the level of nitrogen and phosphate standards set by WRC will be different. Again, so along the same lines of, it's still, we need to work hard to think about what the best solution is. If an MBR, which is the state of the art, the best of the best that we have at the moment, is where we're going to head to with this project. What are the options? We just things are still in play. The things are still working, and we're just I know where I sit in water care, there is involved investigation work with MABR, which adds it's a membrane with aerobic action, which it makes it more efficient, and it reduces the cost of running a membrane reactor. So again, is that something that could lessen that 30 million to a point where it becomes affordable? The quick message is, this is finding a treatment and discharge solution. It isn't straightforward. We still haven't got all the answers yet, which just seems nuts when the time we spend on it. But these things do take a long time, and we're still looking for answers. But at the same time, we're still needing to narrow down optioneering toward an application or something that we can submit to WRC. So in terms of working towards getting an application together, that's something that I mentioned at the last meeting. It was moving forward with the multi-criteria analysis scoring, and this is the crunchy stuff, and I'm hoping to get things underway and well, Feb's gone, at least in March, to try and go through the criteria and just explain and educate people what we're trying to do and how we can do it. So there's a list of criteria that go into a multi-criteria analysis. For each criteria, there's a scoring, there's a 1 to 10 scoring that can be applied to it. I guess the traditional sort of traffic light system, 1 is significant. No, I'm not sure. One is significant, 1 is not significant. So in terms of when you're looking at the different criteria, there's parts of it that can really that you look for specialist help, like for the public health component. That's what WRC needs to see there is the qualitative microbial risk analysis, which is the modelling work that we've engaged specialised people to do it. It's John Ullman from DHI, and so the modelling that's needed in the harbour environment, we've already done it for the existing state of the environment with the point source discharge. We now need to do it with the other options, which is the MBR with the freshwater discharge point as well. And so that is, again, you just wonder, this should be instant, but it never is. And so that's sort of, we have been working on it, and it's for that component will be 4 weeks away. But there's other parts to all these as well, and I do have a breakdown of what's within the criteria, which I'm going to share. When I distribute the minute notes, and maybe give more of an explanation behind it. But I guess it's at a point now when we start doing this, we're sort of maybe we're going to be moving out of the Zoom world and more into the physical workshopping, and really trying to engage more with the community, because there's ability to do several multi-criteria analysis between different groups, because they're not all going to be the same. There'll be one like, what does WDC think? What do the technical groups think? What does the different communities, how do they rank things alongside hapu? Again, we're at a point where it's just scoring, putting everything into a melting pot. But when you have something put down and write down, that it gives everyone a chance to react to it. And then the next stage of it would be, what weighting do you give to each of the criteria? It's quite a complex process, but one that's been repeated many times, and it is best practice for application preparation. So that is just a brief description of multi-criteria analysis. I know we've gone through it many times, but it's just hoping every time we do it, it starts sinking in a bit more. It isn't the final component of the it isn't the final component of the best practical option determination, and the costing side of things isn't scored within this. So I've just put within this multi-criteria analysis. So I just in my own mind, I just put some queries together about the process, and it's sort of it just seems like a whole lot of busy words and talk. What do we have to do in MCA? And it's sort of there is a requirement under the RMA. There's expectation that you have to assess the effects of each options against each other. So an application will always have this comparison of options. It is best practice. And again, I think I sort of covered it. It's information gathering about where we sit with the different sectors. Are we miles apart? Could be, or is everyone getting more comfortable narrowing down to a specific shortlisted option? So why isn't the cost? Why don't we think about costing when we're doing the analysis? We know what the costs are. We know one of them seems crazy money with the private land the private land option. It's sort of like when you start thinking about the introduction of costs, it can influence environmental effects consideration. That's not what is needed here. This is an environmental effects assessment coupled with trying to meet the community expectations and other expectations as well. So that the dollars comes into a separate lens when the weighting occurs and it gets put into a larger mix. What's my next one? Why is MCA step necessary? Outcomes seem very straightforward, and it's just a case of with the application you really have to be able to get it to a point where someone can pick it up and years down the track and understand how and why a group of people got to this decision. This is the methodology that's used. This isn't the first application discharge in New Zealand that's used frequently, and it does work. So another one is like where to from here? What do we who does make the best practical option decision? I put that under the first one. I didn't quite cover it. There will be at the end of it, when everything is gathered together and looked at side by side, weightings determined, and the costing lens gets put over it. There has to be a point where the buck stops with the Water Governance Board, the ELT, and Council. It has to be presented by the technical group with where we got to in this process. So I'm up to the section C of my presentation, and it was just the additional work that's been happening in the last month, and it was touched on it last meeting, covering the lure of the airstrip. It's the soils are different there. They're different in a way that can take greater amounts of treated wastewater when we consider the clayey nature of many other parts of Raglan. And I just needed to say we're still really at the knowledge building stage, and we appreciate all the help we're getting. Hapu, there isn't anything in place to say we can actually. I mean, up to today, it has been. There's other uses for this land. It's not going to be. Don't automatically just think it can be used for the purposes of this. It isn't the case at all. But at least there's an ability to start thinking about the possibility of it and presenting a business case to Hapu and WDC if it becomes a favourable site. So at the last meeting we covered our visit to a working example in the Waikato and Coromandel, the Pauanui network. So what has advanced is we're sort of in the midst of talking with the expert that designed that alongside the Omaha Gulf, the Gulf drip irrigation system, and just trying to get that lens over that would be really great. And so we're looking to get an engagement together with that engineer. So that I think that's, I mean, for me that's a great one just to really challenge what we've done thus far and just think about what we can do in these with a small window of opportunity at the spit, and enable us to talk to the other groups that are needed, WDC and Hapu. So as part of that, in parallel, I'm working through with the WDC property team just to say, in this scenario that it becomes a durable, like a real solution for discharge, where to from here? And there's lots of things behind it. We all know that there's the history of that property, where there's and the resolution that's still to come. has a purpose already, which isn't has nothing to do with wastewater treatment. So there has to be, you can't just say, oh, this seems ideal, we'll just do it. There's other designations, etc., that are needed. Again, it says it's appreciated by the Raglan community for what it is, an area of open space for walking, for viewing and that nature. And we know it's going to change. The ownership is going to change in time when things are sorted with local hapu. So there's a lot in it, but not afraid of it. We're just going to have to work through it and just present it. Additional. This is just an additional part of the work I'm going through, just as an update. We had an opportunity just to touch base with a technical manager up in Newmarket that works through solar solutions, just to seeing what could we do at Raglan. And it didn't seem, and it was good to just have a site visit and just understand possibilities. And he's gave me a really broad brush description of that there could be ability to really utilize some of the space here. There is a bit of real estate, and in terms of solar, it's not just a token nice to have. It can really have a lot of benefits. Can really, and I've just sort of cut and paste a few of them there. Improve site resilience. It means that we're not. It would meet with a solar array within the 3,000 meter squared blob that I've put there. You would be able to power the site when having some extra during the height of sun. It will produce extra for the grid. It makes you less dependent on prices. Running aerators is extra for the ponds, aerated ponds. Cost is significant. Also, within your upgrade to a plant, there's heaps of running costs that go into the OPEX of a plant. This could lessen this. Could be complementary to other initiatives that I know are occurring within Raglan, led by Rick. So, trying to connect the dots between my friend Lawrence, who's come down, and Rick was just too good opportunity. So we're actually going to visit Rick and hopefully we can lever off that any relationship that's formed for the benefit of Raglan. It's sort of veering off this project, but it's just a good chance to bring the two of them together a little bit. Planting and vetiver investigation. Again, vetiver, is this a wonder plant? We're not quite sure, but there could be some multiple uses for cultural acceptance of when you need to put treated wastewater to soil and have root contact. There could be uses for erosion protection, and the structure of the roots, I think I've gone through it before, it does sort of act like a retaining wall within the ground. So just giving it a nudge and just saying, well, what if we could get an opportunity to plant up a big area with vetiver that as part of a discharge field, and what if it could enhance the integrity of dunes that is a great concern to many, particularly hapu, them disappearing. So what we're doing is just partnering with Wintec, leaning on some advice from them, and actually getting some plants in the ground as some tangible examples of planting that may have multiple benefits, including this project. So that is going to be occurring, and we're going to receive the plants in March, and it's going to be time to put some plots together for some real community research over the year. Again, the last one I've just put there is the spawning survey. This is the waterway that's sort of the church off the Wainui, and it was part of the ecological study that we did earlier, just where we determined the life. That stream it isn't just a boggy old pond. There's inanga, and it has got significant ecological value. Now we're looking at the spawning for the inanga, which we're going to do in late March with hapu alongside us as well. Again, there's enhancement opportunities for the area within the designation and around there, which can be seen as which can act as mitigation for the project. The last thing I just put a question was why do we investigate in these components? It goes beyond just the treatment and discharge for the consent, but it is part of meeting the project objectives that we got together on day one, and it does offer ability to co-design alongside the community, which is something that WDC strives for with all their projects. That's me, a short one tonight. I've just put a last slide, wrap up queries, and sort of hand it over to the councillor for some words.
Thank you for that. Short and sweet, but some progress again, which is useful to see. And Ian has joined us now too. Welcome, Ian. Let's just kick right into answering some of the comments along the way. I think, John, you were first to put a comment on the chat there, asking. Well, I'll let you ask your question directly to Stephen.
Well, this was when Stephen was saying how expensive some of the projects were, and my question was, but how accurate is that private land costing? And just suggesting it'd be helpful to go through my questions first to try and get a handle on that before deciding that that is the most expensive one.
Yep, John, I do have your. I've got them right here. Can you see my screen? These are your questions, and I haven't been able to dig deep into them yet, do a deep dive, but I can and I will. I just haven't had a chance to give it a nudge yet. So what if we can just pull out the crunchy one about the cost of the private land and just sort of understand? You're just thinking that there's the accuracy is off, or something doesn't sit right with you with the costing that came through with that was in the PDP report and the methodology they used to get to those costs. Is that what you're saying?
Well, maybe I've misunderstood that PDP report, but my understanding was that it was saying that alternative land uses using sewage as a fertilizer could actually be up to 12 times more profitable than sheep and beef farming. And if that's the case, why isn't there a queue of farmers saying, come here, I won't charge you anything? So that's basically my question, whereas a great chunk of that cost is actually buying land. But then there doesn't be any benefit from buying the land. It's assumed that, that it's no better than spending money on any of the other things. Whereas if it is true that and if I have read that PDP report correctly, then having something that's 12 times more profitable should be worth something and count against the initial land cost or make the initial land cost virtually zero. So that's my question on that. Why is it not in the appendix? Why?
I don't, John. It's Richard here from Woodaki. I read that report and I didn't read anywhere that it was 12 times more profitable.
Was it the irrigation report?
Yeah, I mean the costs are clear. I mean they've been done in a consistent manner. They may be out. They're never ever right estimates, but they'll be out proportionally. So there is no question that land disposal is a highly expensive option. We've got to pump flows long distances. We've got to purchase land at quite high cost. So I think to query that they're that far out, they'll be out, but they'll all be out to some extent. When you actually go to do a job, the estimate is never ever spot on. It's an estimate.
So what did that PDP report say about lucerne and all the other crops, and particularly the one that Rick has been talking about, hemp?
Yes, so there's been two reports from PDP. One of them was an irrigation. I mean, no, was a was just to highlight what the advantages of the treated wastewater for irrigation. If there was, like you're right, saying if there was a in times of drought, we're saying there could be free water here for a farmer, etc. This is what you can do with it. Here's the benefits. You still need to get a resource consent, but there is ability to grow things when the rest of the Waikato is a dust bowl. So why did we get that? Again, it's just to it is a tool to write to say, is there an appetite for this? I've rung a lot of landowners now, and there isn't, but doesn't at the moment, but that doesn't mean that that there won't be in the future when water becomes scarcer. I guess there's a lot to your query, and I'm trying to think of a way to give you satisfaction that we haven't missed anything. Perhaps it could be just an offline talk between me, you, and the author of the report to really for 20 minutes just to do it. I know that you like these things, so I know that you won't freak out about it. Would that help you a little bit? Because I can't really answer it myself.
Yeah, because as I say, it seems to me that it looks hugely profitable to get free fertilizer and free water for your land, and yet in these scenarios we're looking at paying huge amounts for that land. And I'm just trying to understand, have I misunderstood it, or has somebody not taken that into account, or what's the story? So that's the basis for my question. So maybe if we did talk it over with the authors, we'd all understand it rather better.
Yep, I think I sort of get where you're coming from. You're saying, from one perspective, you're saying this is a golden opportunity to go for it. The second thing, it's become fanciful because of the cost of it's too greater for the land purchase. But you say with the land purchase, you have XX crops. We wouldn't be so XX opportunity for crops, and that would lessen it over time, sort of thing.
Well, not just lessen it, but make it something that landowners would actually want. Because you say you've talked to the landowners, but did you send them a copy of this report or tell them about its contents or anything like that?
Yep, I've done everything I possibly could, other than storm their houses like the Capitol building. So it's a big one. It's sort of, and you would never ever expect it. You'd never just cold calling like that and trying to do it. I mean, as a landowner, you just go, what is this? Is this a trick or something? Maybe people are hesitant for it. Maybe they need examples for it in time.
That's an interesting point, actually, Stephen, and possibly, if approaches were to come from the community itself, people like Rick, people like you, John, saying, hey, listen, there is actually an opportunity here. We're trying to solve a community problem, but there's a silver lining to this particular, poo-colored cloud. And, it's free nutrient-rich water, which is, has been through the treatment process, but could fertilize a crop. All right, so shall we park that one, John? Are you happy with that? If Stephen and yourself can get together with the author? Yep. Okay, thank you. All right, well, let's move on. Chris, you're on fire. You've got two live queries, both about the criteria, and well, I'll let you talk to that itself in terms of the climate resilience, I guess, and inundation zone. So you want to put your questions, please, to Stephen?
Okay, first of all, thank you very much, Stephen, for all the work that you've obviously been doing while I've been busy DJing at festivals.
Yeah,
that's wonderful. It's wonderful to think that that you've not really had a summer and you've been working all the time. But so yeah, just a couple of little things that I could see. First question is, who sets the weighting on those parameters or categories, if you like, in the multi-category decision-making process? Is that a water care thing, a WDC thing, a regional council thing? Like, how do you decide how much weighting to give, cultural as opposed to environment, as opposed to financial? What's the process for making that?
That's the so in the first part of the multi-criteria analysis, it would just be they'd be all level. You just have you'd have how does this rank between 1 and 10? How the weighting of it is when you is a time for debate, discussion, and hopefully you can arrive at somewhere. And it's going to be the tricky part of when we get to a best practical option. There isn't who makes it. It's up to the project team to present findings from the first layers of multi-criteria analysis. That's part A. Part B is the time to really check in with community hapu and particularly and councillors, etc., to say this is one scenario, this is another scenario. The weightings can change. What if the weightings change? These sorts of things all influence it, and this is where I'm leaning on the experience of our RMA specialists that we've got on board. How they've done it in the past. There must be some way to do it. We're not doing something that has never ever been done before. Talking to Garrett today, it's saying yes, this is where you show the different scenarios, a different weighting given to cultural. Maybe cultural is, I mean, maybe maybe we just have to lean heavily on this, and it really changes the option, and that can be fine. So,
Richard, sorry, Stephen. Can I ask Richard to comment on that? Have you been through one of these?
Yeah. Thanks, Council. It's a really good question, Chris, because I think really the team at Watercare will come up with, along with our consultants, some suggested weightings, and I think that will be run past a forum, the workshops which Steve you've indicated we're going to have once we get to the MCA. We'll come up with some suggested weightings, but then it'll have to come past the public forum to check that really matches. And then you can run scenarios of, you said, like you were suggesting before, I think it was Steve, where you weight something quite highly, and then you go back and you reduce it by 10% maybe, and see how that impacts on it. Do a sensitivity type analysis to the whole MCA.
Okay, yeah, so it's not dictated to, like we
no
process, we have to work it out basically.
Yeah.
Cool. Other little questions would be obviously, like when you're looking at low-lying land, I mean, what are the current rules for Waikato District Council putting in any infrastructure that low? I saw there was actual restrictions in terms of the climate change inundation zone, and yeah, that was
that's a really good point too, Chris. We'll have to look at that airstrip land and see how it is impacted if that becomes a favoured option.
Yeah.
There is a WRC WRC, what do you call it, GIS that has this, and we know that the existing plant, etc., is outside it, but we'll revisit that. But we're looking at a life of 35 years for this consent. So again, we have to think about in a couple of hundred years, the whole of New Zealand will be very different, but we have to think about what we're doing over the next immediate future.
And looking at those options and making sure we can adapt, in the future, depending on the plant life and if we were going to keep using wherever we do decide to discharge too.
A couple of other little questions that officially came from the board when we were meeting the community board the other day. And so obviously our aspirational target of November has come and gone. Do we have a new aspirational target for lodging this application?
Yep. So earlier that became clear that the November wasn't going to be met, and so it would be 6 months ago we talked about, even earlier was saying that Matariki would have been another deadline we would like to meet, and that's what we're working for. We're trying to motor through this, but hopefully it's recognised that nothing is straightforward with this, and it could be, and these things take yonks. But you do need a goal line to go toward. So July. Lodgement in July is what we're pushing our consultants for.
Yeah, and like Steve's pointed out in his presentation, he has some of these other options, like the treatment process using MABR is something which is very new technology, which we're looking at closely. We're looking at not just for this site, for some of our other treatment plant upgrades. Watercare, the governance board, agreed to help fund a trial which they're doing up at Mangere Treatment Plant on that technology to test its effectiveness, because there aren't that many plants in the world using this technology. So it's something that's come since we started this project. We keep getting things. The Paonui option, we're now working pretty quick, Steve? We were talking to the engineer who designed that today to try and get his input into that. So there are things that we thought we had certain options lined up, but we get new things coming in, and it's really is important that we get through those investigations into those options as quickly as possible. But our management is putting a lot of pressure on us to have this lodged in July.
Yeah, that's good. I think people will be happy to know that there is a date out there.
It can't be a never-ending thing, Chris?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
you guys will get sick of coming to these meetings.
Not John.
The other thing is obviously your consultation with Hapu is happening in parallel to this. Is there at some point where you and Hapu, or you can give the rest of us an update, of where Hapu is on this and how they, like, I know the conversations I've had, they've always said that like the water treatment has to be the best standard first and foremost, and then we obviously talk about discharge. But is there a way that over the next couple of months, together with Hapu, that you could give the rest of us a kind of update as to your consultation with them? Because a lot of us would love to know more about their positioning.
Yep. So at the moment just highlight a couple of initiatives that we're talking things through, using some, like for the planting and the potential to test the land. Again, it's just can definitely do whatever that's needed. I don't think there's no big thing, nothing big happening other than just saying, can we do some testing, can we do some planning together? And we all know that innovation, etc., excites everyone, and that's what I'm working a lot with Angeline on.
The community position will come out of a lot of the Hapu position, and we don't want to be on different pages. So there's a kind of feeling that at some point it would be great if there's a chance to bring us all together.
I mean, that's our feeling too, but Steve is putting a lot of effort in that, and that's part of the reason we are really putting quite a bit of effort into this, the potential in the disposal in the sandy areas, Chris, because we all know, it's no secret, that the ocean outfall is unpalatable to them. It's offensive, and we're trying to find something which is offensive. And a lot of the land options we've brought forward still have the winter discharge to the ocean. So, yeah, Steve's working a lot. We talk to Angeline a lot. Yeah.
Go. Awesome.
So can I just pick up on that point? I think, Chris, if I'm hearing you right, you're really on behalf of the community board concerned that we don't get sort of misaligned at some stage, because there's not so much insight into the process that you and Richard and Stephen, you're doing with Hapu. We're just making sure that we don't get out of step, I think, in effect, is what you're saying, Chris.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, because effectively, it's no use the rest of the community considering different options in that if Hapu aren't across the line. Again, it is the council and Hapu have to come to a position point on what is acceptable, and then those options come down to the rest of the community to say, this is what you're going to have to pay for. The community really, we cannot dictate to Hapu what is acceptable or not acceptable for them.
Absolutely, Tony, you're spot on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all that came up in the chat. Is anybody else who've got any questions, or perhaps the conversation to date might have sparked another comment? Anything from anybody at this stage? Charlie, I've never been at a meeting where we've not said anything. I'll make a note in the diary.
His mic's broken. Oh, there he goes.
Yeah, no, I'm sitting down. I'm sitting down in Wanaka, so I didn't want to rub salt in anybody's wound. So
Yeah, that's right. Good luck trying to find some land for discharge down there. That's
yeah. Hey, but I'll tell you what. Just a comment. You know, I read the report you sent to Stephen. It is. I felt really comprehensive, and I think it's a you know, a really good. You've done a really good job at you know, outlining, I think, you know, a lot of those options, and I hear everybody, you know, about, you know, it's the magic is getting everybody on board and on the plan, but you know, and you have costs sitting off to the side and things like that, but you know, it does boil down to ratepayers too, and you know, it's a huge amount, and it's just, yeah, it's just trying to finesse the thing down the right channels is going to be the magic. But I think your optioneering is good, and I think it gives everybody a platform to work off of. So after I reviewed it, so I just, you know, tip my hat and you know, continue to go down the line and addressing some of the other questions like John had on cropping and things like that. But I think, you know, you got about 95% of it in my head, you know, where you can take that to the community and start vetting it out. So anyway, it's good job.
Thanks, Charlie. We'll just move forward into the mist. But when we start getting things documented, it does give things to people a chance to react to it, and balancing their multi-criteria analysis will be a big thing to do. So yeah, we're going to be moving out of the Zoom into the actual workshopping stage very, very soon, I hope.
yeah, I think we're all ready for that. And and just on the question around affordability, Charlie, we're all, you know, extremely conscious of that too at council. And the you know, Te Mātarawai, the new water authority, you know, we're busy, you know, waving our hands saying, no, we're not waving. Actually, we are drowning. You know, there's a wave of costs coming here to meet the new standards. So this is not just about, you know, us having kicked the can down and not done maintenance at the right time or whatever. This is assets which were, you know, deemed suitable, if you like, and are no longer actually meeting new standards. So that it's not just same as, it's actually the standards have gone up. That's got a cost with it, and you know, we have a very firm view as a council that that actually it's not reasonable for ratepayers to bear all of that, but we can't charge anybody else. So that's where the new water regulator or central government have to come to the party, and we're trying to say that message as loudly and as consistently as we can. Okay, John, you'll have last word before I go to Ian to close us.
On that issue of ratepayers paying, that quite a lot of the cost seems to me to be future-proofing it for lots more ratepayers in the future. And I'm just wondering if anyone started thinking, how do we divide the cost between what it would be if we did a system which charges the existing community and services the existing community, and what it would be if we service what we're thinking of having here in the future, and how you charge those people who come in the future for what's being provided now?
It's absolutely part of what happens, John. We look at all the council projects have a split of three things. It's renewal, level of service, which is the changing standards, which the councillor talked about, and our growth. And growth is met by DCs, people like the new people working into Rangatahi. We proportion the costs, so that happens on all our projects.
Yep.
The other part of it is the finance team are just running around crazy with the LTP at the moment, but there will be a window where we can start talking about to understand those splits and present that as well. So we are talking with the finance manager on that. So I hope to present it.
Yeah, and currently they're modelling the whole LTP, so that it's a huge load on them, and they have deadlines to meet. So we've allowed, like Steve said in his presentation, a certain amount of, I think it's currently 24 million. for this project, and they've done their modelling on that assumption. So if we go outside that window, obviously it has implications on affordability and all those things.
Suspect the 24 million is not affordable either, but
Yeah.
it's a different conversation. Chris,
Yes.
to reward turning up on time, right day, right time, you can slip in one last question and then Ian will come to you.
Yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, we talked earlier months ago about the stormwater infiltration and trying to reduce that. Is that still an active, like where are we at in terms of reducing the amount of stormwater that's getting into the wastewater to start with?
At the moment, Chris, at the last meeting we sort of presented a little bit on what we're getting. We did some bulk assumptions of what we're getting at the plant and what is wet weather flow, either through infiltration or fast flow connection type issues. Then currently we're refining our hydraulic model of the whole network and looking back at flows at different catchments within the network. That work takes time, but at the moment, our first cut the network does have wet weather issues, just like every network in New Zealand does, but it's not particularly good and it's not particularly bad. It's sort of in the middle, yeah. But we will be able to break that down further with the work we're doing into whether there's particular catchments which are contributing more, some of the older parts of town and newer parts of town, or areas which have a lot of pipes and swamps and high water table areas. So that work is happening, but it is going to take a couple more months.
Okay, thank you. Ian.
Yeah, I just sorry.
Yeah, where you go.
Just to respond to that, at what point do we start talking to central government? With regard to what Richard was just talking to about the LTP build, the Water Governance Board, which I think I've mentioned before, they've put forward quite an ambitious LTP budget around getting to where we need to get to in waters and a big step change. And that's got an increase in cost to the community to it, but betterment in terms of standards, environmental outcomes, et cetera, So that affordability issue, the governance board we've been trying to get hold of get the local government minister to the governance board for quite some months, and she was actually coming, and then there was a COVID scare with her husband, I think, and that never happened. We've not got back to that, but we were actually at the last meeting just yesterday. The governance board decided that they would, in effect, send a delegation to meet the local government minister in Wellington to raise around the unaffordability or the affordability gap between where we aspirationally need to be and where we are now. So that work is ongoing. We're also involved in the water reform discussions. I'm on a steering group for that, which is really trying to look. Well, there's a massive piece of work going on, obviously, around how do we get the gap between where we need to be, where we are now, and how does that happen around reform and all the rest of it. So that is going on. That's just the feedback in terms of central government. That should happen imminently. And then just closing the meeting today, I think, is that the intent as well, Councillor Beck?
Thank you, yes.
Yeah, I joined slightly late, apologies. I had a bitty car connection at the time, but I thought there was really good discussion again today. I'm enjoying the meetings and the innovative side that's coming out. The airstrip work, I've been aware of that through the property group at council. They've been talking to me about that. I think that's great to be exploring such options. I like the solar and the planting and the spawning, all that sort of stuff. So I think that's really good as part of the trying to get to this BPO and some best outcome for the cultural side of things and for the broader community inside an envelope, hopefully of affordability and maybe some funding in future from the government in terms of the next tranche with regard to water reform. There is money coming, and if we can maybe tap into that, that would be great for a good outcome. More good work. I'm looking forward to getting to the MCA work and then the BPO and then getting the submission in. I think that was a valid point raised around the positioning with Hapu and making sure that it's meeting their needs as well. That's obviously so key to this whole project. So yeah, look, I'm loving seeing the work that Stephen and team are doing and Watercare. So yeah, and enjoy the discussion we're having here. I'll miss these meetings if we ever have to stop.
Ian, on that point, I talked to Nanaya face to face in the Hamilton Garden, and she promised me direct to my face she would come to Raglan and talk to us about this issue. So if you want, I feel free to like actually call in that.
Yeah. Incidentally, you've just reminded me again. The Water Governance Board are actually coming to the plant at their next meeting, which is in March, late March. The Water Governance Board are coming to have a look at the plant and just be able to visualize everything, as well as they've had the presentations and the strategies and the like. They're actually coming to site to help to get the first hand as well. So that's quite exciting.
I think the community board would love to probably join on that, at least a couple of us.
Okay. Let me just think on that one.
Yep.
Yeah, that might be wise, actually.
It would be me and Tony.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just see. Yep. Okay. Very good.
Good. And on behalf of every non-Aucklander, Ian, I can assure you that the rest of us would be quite happy to go back into our in-person, in real life workshop. But we'll leave you Northerners to do your zooming in and out of levels. Yeah. Right. Well, with that, I'll close for tonight. Thanks again to everyone. We had a few people come and go, but really good discussion again, as Ian has said. So thanks very much. And Stephen, I guess we'll meet again in a month's time.
Yep.
Good stuff. All right. Thanks very much.
Thanks, team. Have a good evening. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.